Let me tell you, you never really know just how far folks will go until you catch them with their hands in the cookie jar and they try to sue you for the recipe. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. One minute, I'm out there replacing a busted trail sign near the Western Ridge, minding my own business, feeling the pine needles crunch under my boots. And the next thing I know, my phone's buzzing in my vest. I don't usually answer unknown numbers. Life's too short for spam calls. But something about that local area code, I just knew it wasn't going to be good news. The voice on the other end was tight, almost whispering. "Mr. Bishop, you own the land out by Diamondback Lake, right?" And before I could even get a full yes out, she launches in. Lacey, turns out she and her husband are renting my cabin for the weekend, the one tucked by the cedar grove. She says there's a situation. A bunch of people just showed up with RVs, tents, coolers. Said it's the HOA's annual campout, but they're everywhere, lakefront bonfires, music blasting, nobody asked us for a thing. I didn't even hang up. I just turned and beelined it for my old F-150 Heart, hammering the kind of mad that makes your hands shake but your feet move twice as fast. I hit the dirt road so hard my shock squealed, and halfway there I could already hear it, the bass thumping, the kind of party you throw when you're sure you'll never have to clean up. I crested the ridge, and there it was. At least 40 people sprawled across the shoreline like a yard sale. Exploded tents dotting my moss beds, smoke curling off portable grills, and kids running wild through patches of moss I spent 2 years bringing back to life. And right there at the center of it all, sitting in a zero-gravity chair like she owned the joint, was Karen Stiller. Yeah, that Karen. Pearl earrings, glass of wine. HOA president, professional busybody. I'd seen her before she tried to argue at a community meeting that my grandfather's lake should be a wellness hub. I just marched straight at her boots, crunching over beer caps and sandwich crusts, a Labrador tearing past me with a rope toy and half a sandwich in its mouth. She smiled at me like I was the one out of place. "Randall, I was wondering when you'd show up." "Lovely spot you've got here. We'll make sure to clean up," she says, gesturing at a fire pit damn near touching the roots of a 500-year-old spruce. I kept it flat, told her straight, "You're trespassing." She just laughed, waving a perfectly manicured hand, and tells me some story about the Colorado Public Access Framework, how the lake's communal and they voted on it at their HOA meeting, so apparently I don't get a say. You ever have someone try to explain your own life to you? That was the vibe. I pointed out the county signs. No fires, no camping, all by permit only. They didn't have a single permit. She rolled her eyes, sipped her wine, and said I was being dramatic. So I started recording on my phone, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that folks get braver when there's no evidence. Gave them 5 minutes to start packing or I'd call the sheriff. She smirked, so I dialed. The deputies arrived quick, probably wanted to see the circus for themselves. They checked IDs, maps, permits, and Deputy Morales, good guy, knows his stuff, studied my laminated surveyor's map and told Karen point blank, "This is Mr. Bishop's land. The HOA has no claim." Karen sputtered, tried to bring up some picnic from 2018 that I actually approved myself. Didn't matter. The deputies wrote them up a fat fine for trespassing, another for the fire, and ordered them to vacate immediately. You'd think the world was ending. People scrambling coolers, dropped RVs, tearing out Karen, red-faced, threatening me out her window. "You'll regret this." I stood there feeling the dust settle, already knowing it wasn't over. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I get this gold-embossed envelope slid under my gate, Whispering Pines HOA suing me in district court, accusing me of everything from obstructing community access to emotional harm. They wanted $100,000 and permanent rights to my lake. I sat in my truck just numb. Then I called Hank Caswell, my lawyer. Fourth-generation mountain attorney, the kind of guy who can sniff out a forged map faster than you can say easement. He looked over the lawsuit, snorted, and said, "They'll fold, Randall. These HOA folks always do. Just got to breathe on them." But then He pointed at a detail on the map. They attached a new community easement drawn right over my lake, citing a zoning amendment he'd never heard of. That's when things stopped being funny. I had the original deeds maps, permits, my grandfather's construction photos, water board letters, you name it. But this wasn't just about paperwork. They started spinning stories, a glossy newsletter to every mailbox about how our community fights for fair access, made-up events, fake testimonials, even a doctored map. And then came the clipboard people, late-night phone calls, bags of marshmallows on my porch, little mind games. That's when I wired up the place like a national park, motion sensors, trail cams, every path watched. I wasn't about to get run off my own land by a woman who thought pearl earrings came with legal authority. And just when I thought it was all smoke and mirrors, Hank calls me into the barn, shows me a website, whisperingpinescamping.org, advertising our beloved Diamondback Lake, complete with fake family photos, bogus permits, testimonials. My coffee hit the floor. Hank traced the registration. It was Karen's personal Gmail. She'd left a digital footprint so wide a toddler could follow it. But the twist, the one that really kicked the legs out from under me, came from the inside. I get a call from Grayson Miller, one of the original HOA board members, soft-spoken, gray-haired, the kind of guy who apologizes to trees when he trims a branch. He slides me a folder in the local diner board meeting transcripts, budgets, private emails. Karen was running the whole lawsuit out of the HOA's reserve funds without half the board even knowing. Her emails to the PR firm were pure gold. If we control the conversation, we win regardless of the paperwork. Grayson said, I knew your dad, Randall. I'm not letting her steal your land. That's when I realized this was never about access. It was about power and perception. And perception these days is more dangerous than a bulldozer. So I flipped the script. Signs went up at every entrance, private property, legal citations, the original dam permit displayed in a weatherproof box for all to see. Added a plaque, Bishop family land since 1931. All false claims will be met with legal action. I made it impossible to take a step near that lake without the law staring you down. Karen pushed back with a sign of her own QR code to her fake website. I laminated the server logs showing her email and posted them next to her sign. That QR code didn't last the week. But it got nastier. Karen doubled down, pushed the HOA to hire a land use consultant to pressure for eminent domain. Then I get a letter from the county planning board. They're conducting a feasibility study, which is government speak, for we might steal your land and call it a park. Hank just about exploded. So I went public. Grayson put me in touch with Phil Huxley, a retired reporter who ran a blog called the Dirt Road Ledger. He'd seen enough HOA shenanigans to fill a book. I showed him everything: fake signs, trail cam footage, doctored maps, the whole 9 yards. He dropped an expose that spread like wildfire, and suddenly Karen's name was all over the news, not the way she wanted. That's when the dominoes fell. HOA members started resigning. Board demanded audits. Residents realized their dues were funding Karen's crusade. Even the county backed off their study, said they wanted no part of the mess. But Karen, she went out swinging. Threats, last-ditch meetings yelling about legacy and community rights. It all ended with a single sheet of paper taped to my gate. See you in court, Bishop, or maybe in hell first. But the best was still to come. Hank's clerk dug up the signature on Karen's map, belonged to a county records clerk who'd been dead 2 years before the map was supposedly signed. We ran the maps through a forensic examiner, digital tampering, clear as day. Even the font was wrong. The PDF's metadata, Karen's name. Hank filed a motion to dismiss, turned the evidence over to the DA, and suddenly we weren't talking about HOA rules, we were talking felony charges. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Locals, reporters, HOA members, even a few folks I'd never seen before, everyone eager to see how it shook out. Hank dismantled Karen's whole argument with a timeline and a stack of evidence that could have choked a horse. He dropped the bomb the consultant the HOA hired was her cousin paid out of community funds. The judge didn't even flinch, dismissed the HOA's case, upheld our countersuit, ordered Karen to pay damages legal fees, and slapped a permanent injunction keeping her and any HOA rep away from the lake. Then the judge referred the whole mess to the DA for criminal prosecution, document fraud, abuse of funds, you name it. Afterward, folks from the HOA came up, some embarrassed, some apologetic. Grayson handed me a little brass plaque, Diamondback Lake, Bishop family land still standing. We didn't really celebrate. It wasn't that kind of victory. The real reward was the silence that came back to the water, the peace that settles when everyone finally backs off and lets the place breathe. A year later, the lake's quiet. Karen's gone plea deal fines barred from any HOA in the State House foreclosed. The HOA's barely alive, Grayson's leading a reform committee, and the fake camping website's a printout on my workshop wall, a souvenir of how wild entitlement can get. I still walk the trails, fix the fences, drink terrible coffee, watch the sun catch on the lake. But something changed. I used to think I was just a caretaker. Now I know I'm a defender of truth, and sometimes that truth's as simple as a line in the dirt. On the anniversary of the trial, we had a little cookout under the cedars, just a handful of friends and a sky full of stars. Hank tapped the glass over the court. Ruling grinned, said, "Best closing argument I ever saw." I laughed. "Think I could put it on a t-shirt?" He just shrugged. "You'd sell out in Whispering Pines." When they left, I took one more walk down by the lake, stars overhead, water smooth as glass, and for the first time in a long while, I finally let myself breathe. So what do you think? Is justice just about the paperwork? Or is it about standing your ground when the world tries to rewrite your story? Drop a comment. Tell me if you've ever stared down the bulldozer of community entitlement. I'll be reading right here where the water's quiet and the truth finally got a place to rest.